Hi, Misha here, and over on the main Mishaco channel, posted a kind of full history as best I could in the time allowed. Video on the FB-Radom. It's gone through a few different names. And towards the end of that video, I said I would do a video on this personal channel. More opinion, personal stories about each of these Polish AKs I own. So let's do that now. If you are coming over from the main channel here, yeah, this is just my personal channel of ramblings. They're not really scripted or thought out or anything like that, and they don't really represent the views of Mishaco necessarily. Just mine, just a place for me to chill and, take a load off. So with that, yeah, we'll go through each of these and just, talk a bit about them and then end it back here. When the KBKG 1960 kits came in, they usually came with their grenade backpack. Sorry, this one's a little dusty and it's got little white flecks on it from packing peanuts. It's just kind of been around. But yeah, this one came with the guns. Opens up here. It's got kind of an initial flap, and then it has some securing straps here. Has a spot for different types of grenades under here. Comes with a little mag for blanks. Comes with the rubber recoil boot, the sight, an oiler or whatever else. Also has a spot for a cleaning kit if you need it. Over here we have the muzzle device itself, the grenade launcher, plus a wrench to install it and uninstall it easily. That's why the gun has kind of the interesting and different spring-loaded plunger. It's for that. So yeah, this is what they come with. It also has some like a shoulder strap with a pad, and then some kind of belt straps or back straps if you want to use it like that. So let's get the things out of here. So here's our rubber boot. It's actually pretty thick because it just barely goes on to the... it's quite flipping over. But just in there. So the rest of this is just recoil. Of course, these hook in to the holes here. You put them on from the bottom, then you kind of pull it back like a rubber band and let it over your thing. That's actually why there's a cleaning kit in here, because if you have your boot on, it covers up the storage compartment. So it gives you an extra cleaning kit if you happen to need it. Effective enough, but also makes the gun very long. Over here we have the grenade sight. It goes on kind of over and above your regular sight. It clamps on with a wing nut here, and we have this leveler thing on this side that moves. Adjustable. This is the early machined style. Around 1970 they went to a simplified, lighter, stamped style. Here's a practice grenade. This goes right on the thing. They had several different variants and types of live and practice. It's actually got a lot of weight in the end here. It's a hollow tube. And of course, here is our grenade launcher attachment. Similar concept to the Yugo, but a different style. We would just flip this to the position to cut the gas off, and away we would go. One interesting thing, I'm going to set you down for a second. This hand tightens pretty well, but you want to use the wrench because, well, you're launching grenades. It's on 14x1 left-hand threads, pretty standard. But if you notice, the barrel sticks out farther than the threads and is kind of tapered down. This is for a gas seal. Notice with the later Tantal and the Brielle, they continue to do an extended barrel. This is also why the barrel on the Century Sporters is a little longer on the threaded portion, because they measured this overall length, which is slightly more, but they didn't give it that taper, so it kind of made it a little off. Even the muzzle nut that goes on here is meant to handle that taper. Kind of interesting. They were very thoughtful. And again, they provide a short mag for using rifle blanks. 5 or 10 rounds, I honestly forget. And originally these would have, of course, wooden pistol grips. But as later ones would be made, or older ones refurbished, they would start getting the standard Bakelite grip. Sorry I didn't do full installation of the kit, but it'd just be very long. But I thought some might not have seen the setup here, and it's definitely an interesting thing. You can see why they gave it their own Polish designation, because with the kit, this is all uniquely FB, or I should say at this time ZM, Radom. Not really Soviet exactly. We'll move on. I guess we'll go chronological in the sense not of when I acquired them, but their point in history. So by that measure, this is my oldest Polish AK. At least the original parts are old. This is a KBKG WZ60 or 1960. And this is a special grenade launching variant of the AK Type 3. Originally, the AK Type 3 was known as the PMK in Poland, but in 1959 or thereabouts, it was renamed to the KBK AK. And they never, as far as I know, did a underfolding version of this gun, but they did make a small run of detaching stock versions. Kind of neat. And I've actually had the detaching stocks. Years ago, Robert RTG had mint stocks. You'd have to modify the tangs on your receiver. But it's kind of a neat gun. These were one of the earlier kind of commercially available kit builds, coming in right when the stripped Arsenal milled receivers were available, late 90s, early 2000s. And back then, kits could come in with barrels. And this was assembled by Gordon Tech using all the parts. And it did come with the full grenade kit because they realized everything. And it had a US pistol grip. I put this one on to be more authentic. The mag catch isn't authentic, it's a newer style, but it was already made with the receiver. And originally this would have had a screw-in barrel. This is a press pin, but even the Polytech Legends are press pin. That's just kind of modern manufacturing. All in all, they did a great job. Of course, the original guns would have been blued, but later refurbs would have had this paint or a phosphate style finish, so it works. And I always thought having one of the KBKGs would be neato. I thought the gas block, the unique buttstock, the top latch here, keep the dust cover on, was neat. Even the long, wonky barrel that's a little kind of tapered on the end. It's just an ever so slightly longer barrel with shorter threads. The Century arms, 1960s, really whetted my appetite, and I thought, well, if Century couldn't mess those up, why not? Now, back when the kits were available, I did have some of the Hungarians, but I never was fortunate enough to have one of the Polish, and they were kind of here and gone. I tried to be content with the Century 1960, and it was a reasonably good gun, very smooth, but things like the US receiver and barrel, I started looking for one of these around 2012. I wanted specifically this kind of build, the SSR 99P, because it was done by a reputable manufacturer, and all parts are original, even the receiver's an original import, so it's as good as you're going to get for a semi-auto. In 2014, we bought a house, which obviously took a lot of money and time, but I was bidding on an auction on Gunbroker for one of these. Ironically enough, just last week, the guy that had that auction up then contacted me about something unrelated, and we kind of reminisced. Well, that auction went for over $2,000. I think I bowed out at around $1,700 or $1,800. And I remember this was 2014. AKs just, didn't do that. And then it wasn't a week later that this gun popped up. And the guy was happy to accept like $1,400 or $1,500 for it, with the full kit, some extra mags, some dummy grenades, the 2 pistol grips. I might have even had the box. I couldn't have picked a better one. But I had one problem. We just moved at the beginning of October. And we were in a car wreck, Halloween. Car wrecks are expensive. I mean, ultimately insurance pays, but you still manage to be out deductibles, higher rates, things of that nature. I very nearly told the guy I couldn't go through. I hadn't bought it on Gunbroker yet, hadn't committed. I considered backing out. I am really fucking glad I didn't. I somehow scraped the money together. Maybe I sold something, I don't remember. But I managed to get it. It came in, and it met and exceeded my expectations. Jay and I have shot this a few times. It's an excellent shooter. It not only fills a hole in my MILG collection, it gives me a Polish variant to kind of step in there. Jay still has his Century 1960. It's held up well over the years. It's literally bulletproof. Fun story there. But I kind of wanted something a little more authentic and original. And like I said, this cost me $14 or $15, which was a lot of money then. But for original kit on an original receiver built by an actual manufacturer with all the extra goodies, I'm sure they've only gone up since then. And heck, even if you told me they're $1,200 now, I really wouldn't care. It's made me very happy over 7 years. And just shows you how much Polish collecting can be fun. So this is my KBKM, and I really wanted this because it's a great representation of an early model, as I pointed out in several videos. The early ones have some neat features like a blued finish, bolt in the white, hardwood, stock and foregrip, this really interesting pistol grip, and they came with a simple nuzzle mutt instead of a slant brake. Now this is just slapped onto a Morrissey. I actually have a WBP Polish receiver. I need to put this on one day, but time guys. But everything else is kind of what I wanted. And I had several of these, several dozen come in the shop. I can't remember when. 2016 maybe, 2017. They came from Arms of America. And Andrew, who was the owner at the time, gave me the hookup. He kind of gave me dib on kits. I'd tell him what I was looking for. And he had quite a few of these kits. And some of them were in mint condition. And I bought those and sold those. I didn't want a mint one for myself. I wanted one that had a little bit of wear and tear. So I ended up buying quite a few of his blims. And they weren't bad. Like this one has a little crack on the back of the top cover here. On the bottom, I hardly even feel. Totally cosmetic, doesn't matter. I didn't want to sell the one that even has a cosmetic crack to a customer. Also has a little bit of chipping on the side of the buttstock here. So probably it was hit in this area in service. And some of his other blims, they would have mostly matching numbers. You know, you'd have bolt, trunnion, top cover match, but then you'd have a mismatched sight or whatever. And that kind of, you know, small flaws. I was always all for that. Because you could save a lot, give people a good shooter. Now these kits had to come in with the barrels chopped up. Very sad. But luckily, let me grab one here. It's right behind me, so it's easy to do. Hey, I'm done. I think this is one of my Polish. If this isn't Polish, let me know and I'll grab a different one. I have several barrels. But luckily, new manufacturer, FB-Radom barrels have been coming in. These are AKM, 16 1/4. Excellent barrels for building with. And so, what Arms of America did for some of the kits, they assembled them onto these barrels. So you get all original parts. You get an original Polish barrel, but instead of having to worry about pitting or worn out bore or worn out chamber, you get brand new. So it's really the best of both worlds there. So all you had to do, and these kits were also head spaced with the bolt. So all you had to do was just drop them on, rivet, and you were good to go. The bottom rivets here. So really fun, and we sold a lot of these. I also sold quite a few East German kits that came in and were done the same way. And for whatever reason, I just like this one. It spoke to me, so it's the one I kept. And it's just early enough to have all the original style KBK features. And you know, kind of reminds me of Andrew. He stepped away from Arms of America at least most of the way last year. He went back to school, get his master's degree. So yeah, I'm glad he's doing personal improvement. But what the hell? What about me? I want my guy back there to give me the hookup. So, Andrew, get your ass back over there and so we can start doing deals again, because it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking with you. And this is kind of the gun I kept to remember all that. I also kept one of the East Germans. See the bolt carries in the white? It's a fun, honest AKM. Remember I said, kind of like buying blims. You can get some good deals, especially if you don't mind doing little work. So here's my KBK AKMS. I've actually had this one a long time now, at least 10 years. It's built from an original Polish kit, imported back when the barrels were still allowed, so it too has the original barrel, but this is the one from the 1980s. It's the underfolding variety, phosphate finish. I think this is also on either a Nodak or a Morrissey receiver. I didn't build it. This actually came from Allied Armament, who back a few years before had made a large run under contract for Atlantic Firearms. I believe Atlantic supplied the kits and Allied manufactured them for them. This is before Atlantic started doing their manufacturing in-house. But again, with the barrel already in the front, all you had to do was drop it onto the receiver, rivet, add some US parts, and good. But after that run for Atlantic, Allied had some blim guns. Either returns or guns where the original parts were goofed up or where the build just got goofed up. And I bought the crap out of those, both fixed stock and folding, because they had a hell of a deal. They were essentially the price of a parts kit, if not even cheaper. And this was a blim gun, and some of the blims were very minor, like a cracked handguard. This one, I think its blim was the stock is a little loose. It doesn't seem loose to me, but you know how customers can be. Others, the receiver was slightly dimpled in during the process, so the receiver is slightly bent. Some might have had bore corrosion, again, original barrels. A few had things like a binding bolt, which turned out to be, I think in one case, a bad recoil spring guide. Some of them had some goofed up trigger groups. Again, they were US trigger groups, so, you know, replace them. So they were pretty much all fixable. There were only a couple that were just not worth restoring and good for parts, but those were sold even cheaper. So I had my pick, and I went through several, and I ended up going for this one because its blims were quite minor, but moreover because it's an 80s production style, which has some unique features like the Russian type cast gas block and cast and lightning cut front sight base. It also has the later style mag catch and the lipped to prevent over travel takedown, and then has the later style top cover too. Although I did add this period correct grip to replace the black one it originally came with. I actually don't own many underfolders. It's not that I hate them, I just don't find them all that particularly interesting. And I thought, I need a good, solid AKMS. Not a variant like, say, a Romanian PM65 or a Hungarian AK63D. No, I just need a Russian spec AKMS. And Poland was one of the countries that really did make a straight copy, even again to things like going to the cast gas block later on, of a Russian. So that seemed like a good idea with the barrel and the very respectable price point at that. It's actually surprisingly hard to find AKM and AKMS spec guns that are exact original. But yep, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I considered keeping a fixed stock too, but eventually I got the one up here, and that does fine. That fulfills the purpose just fine. I really don't shoot this one often. I have it in a paratrooper bag. It just sits in the safe room, but it's nice to have. Century Arms also did a AKMS sporter, built from Polish kit. They really look very similar to this with the kind of modern looking handguards, but their guns will be on a non-chrome lined Green Mountain US made barrel. This at least has the original. And the Century guns aren't half bad, they're just Century guns. But this one cost me less than one of those would have. And these kits, when they came in, were in really great shape. I've seen them in raw kit form, and yeah, they just looked really nice. So here we go. Yeah, this gives me my two basic Polish AKMs, fixed and folding, early and late, and they make a nice pair. Don't think I'll be getting rid of either any day soon, although I don't really shoot either one all that frequently. Too many guns, ammo's goddamn expensive, never enough time. Let's move on. Up to this point, these guns have all been in 7.62x39, but now we move to 5.45x39. Oftentimes, especially when these first came in, this was just called an AK-74, but it's not. It's the Polish WZ-88 Tantal. And we're not talking semantics. There are vast differences. In fact, most 74 parts don't even work in this. Very different barrel arrangement, totally different muzzle device, 14mm threads. Even the cleaning rod is different. It's a much thinner rod than on a 74. And the handguards, the upper is the distinct one. The lower, this Bakelite, is at least standard, but it's got this QD throw here. We have this latch in the back, pretty much like you saw on the grenade launching mill gun at the beginning, because this was meant to launch. And then we have this wire poker stock, which is a copy of the East German. I'm going to set you down because this one is very stiff. That's because the first owner never really had the stock on it. Instead, he had a bump stock on it. I rescued this gun from a bump stock. Luckily, he kept the original stock and grip. So the good news is the buttstock is tight as a drum. Even has the reinforcing plate inside. And this is a kit build. I think it's on a Nodak receiver. Unfortunately, the Tantal is a victim of timing. These kits started to come in en masse right after the 2005 barrel ban came into effect. Now, some kits did make it in with the original barrels. Inner Arms built some of these, and they were pretty good quality. Some kits floated around. I know that Military Gun Supply had some that they built around 2004, 2005. But most of the ones that Century was the importer of, they had their barrels torched. That meant this was one of the first guns that had to be built with a 5.45 caliber bore barrel made in the USA. And Century contracted with Green Mountain. So these would not be cold hammer forged, they'd be button, and they were not chrome lined, which at that time 7.6 was everywhere. 7.6 is corrosive. That would be bad enough. Lots of people shooting 7.6 through a non-chrome bore. But the problem was they mixed up 223 5.56 with 5.45, and so some of these kind of crept out. They still had a 5.45 correctly cut chamber, but then the bore itself was more for 5.56, and they're just different enough to cause problems. Not safety problems, but keyholing. And that gave the Century Tantal Sporter kind of a bad name. Now, I did own a Century Tantal Sporter back in 2009, and it worked fine. But I really wanted a better gun with the original barrel, which this has. And one other thing. Century used the left side selector, linked it to the right side safety, and made what they called an ambidextrous safety. The problem was the mechanical advantage here wasn't there. Trying to use their left side safety was very difficult on your thumbs, and it caused it to be this lever to be in a really weird position. It didn't look right. I didn't want to go that route. Alternatively, the inner arms guns didn't have a selector over here at all. I would have been okay with that, but I thought it would be neat to have a gun that had the selector here, but either just fixed in a non-working position or just disabled, not connecting to anything, because it has a semi-automatic trigger group. And then I found this gun, and it does. It has the safety on the right side as normal. It's not linked to this one, so you can move it, complete with all detents. Can't overdo it. Well, I guess you can if you really push it. That's something they corrected on the barrel later. But it's just there for cosmetics, which I like more because as a safety it kind of sucked. Just wasn't. I appreciate Century's idea. It's just in practice it didn't work out. But good on them for trying, I suppose. Tantals are just unique, and since only 25,000 were made, they're pretty uncommon in the world. In fact, I would wager that there are more Tantals in America today than still remain in Poland, because these kits were everywhere for a while. And cheap. And Century used a lot of them in their sporters, so I don't know how many came over, but thousands upon thousands. It seems like Poland was more than happy to give them to us. But today the kits have basically dried up, and the ones you find left are missing barrels and other components. Sometimes the furniture is missing. You can also find some with replacement black handguards made in Poland. And while the rear here can take a fixed buttstock, I even had one shipped from Military Gun Supply that came with a fixed stock in the back because I wanted it. In practice, the military stuck with this as a standard stock and never really did the fixed. But it can use either one. Nice to have. And of course, this was the basis for the later Brielle series. Much more successful than the Tantal was. Again, the Tantal from its very beginning in the 80s was a victim of time. And when they came over here, they were a victim of time. They were always a little late. If this had gone into service a few years earlier, and if the kits had come over a couple of years earlier, things would have been much better for this good gun. Because it's not flawed or anything. High quality from FB. And this is the first design they really kind of created on their own with some truly unique features too. Before that, they mostly copied Russian with just a flare here and there to suit their needs. And with that, we'll move on to the post-com block era. Before we get into the Brielles, let's talk about the Fox and why I have it. This one's in a bit of an odd configuration right now. It's in kind of a transitional phase with me. The parts that were on it went on to a Brielle, and so I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do with it. I would just put this buttstock on it because it was cut for this rear mount already, and I have the original Brielle handguard on it because why not? Now the Fox was the first AKM, the first 7.62 type gun we got from Poland that was worth a damn. There were the Pioneer Arms guns that IO brought in, then Pioneer USA later, but this is one that was actually built right with quality forged parts, bolt, trunnion, and they were built with true FB-Radom hammer forged chrome lined barrels. And sometimes other Radom parts too. And ironically, FB-Radom also uses some WBP parts as a subcontractor. Now this was the first of their rifles. They had sent over the Lynx pistol before. And this is actually the first of the first. This was a pre-production, nearly a prototype that was sent over to us. And we had to convert it, open up the magwell, do all that. But we got it about 6 months or so before the release, so we could really shoot it. Their attitude there at Arms of America was shoot it as much as we can, let them know if we come up with any issues. A notion that maybe PSA should consider. Just saying. And this was pretty much unchanged from the production model, except the bayonet lug was done a little differently. This originally came with this piece, not here, and then a little piece you dovetailed and pinned on using the pin for the gas block. For the actual production model, they made it a little simpler. They just had an unfinished block here that could be machined out into a lug once in the USA. Couldn't have a bayonet lug coming over because of, you know, the 89 ban and all that jazz, sporting clauses. It also just came with a regular thumbhole stock. We took it off and put on a regular grip. Most standard butt stocks will fit, but you just need to cut them back just about a ½ inch to take the Brielle mount on top. It usually takes 5 minutes with the Dremel. Nothing crazy there. These do also have the side rail if you prefer to go that route. You do get XY stampings on the receiver, proper magwell dimples. Of course, up here is the other part of the Brielle mount, standard iron sights. This does not take Brielle style handguards. It has a traditional AKM retainer. That's why the lower is Brielle, but the upper is actually a WBP upper. And then it's threaded 14mm. This isn't screwing down all the way because it's sticking. This is just an old Polish AKM flash hider I put on for fun last night. And the magwell came in single stack. We cut it out here to take regular mags. Has a paint finish. The newer Fox V2s have a slightly better paint finish. Also, this one still has the bolt carrier in the white. I feel like some later ones it's now painted with, but I like the white. Kind of reminds me of the AKM. And I don't typically do commercial guns. And this is a commercial gun, but it's made to a high degree. So much so that WBP has now gained contracts with police agencies and even a couple of militaries. Not necessarily to build them totally new guns, but to refurbish their existing guns. And it seems like FB is perfectly happy to let WBP manage the older AKM style guns, while FB focuses on the newer Brielle family and now the MSBS Grot family too. So it works out well for everyone. It lets WBP specialize, and they really have produced a great gun. Jay and I have done tons of videos. This one's had thousands of rounds through it and never missed a lick. And it's just a very solid, dependable gun. 2 different scope mounting options. Authentic 1.0 mil-spec type receiver, original barrel, and the bolt travel on this is just really nice. And again, it takes standard AKM furniture, at least 99% standard. So you can kind of configure it. It really is an AKM, except for having the Brielle mount. And also, this one at least came with a smooth, kind of heavy duty, kind of a tantal style top cover. I think I've seen others that have the rib style. And this one has a non-lightning cut carrier. I think I've seen later ones had the lightning cut. So there's kind of a few features from the AK-47, like the carrier and top cover. But everything else is AKM standard. So think of things like the Romanian Wasser. It's like that. Just a great gun if you haven't had a chance to handle, or even better yet, fire a Fox or the pistol version with the 10-inch barrel, the Lynx. I greatly suggest you try it out. I'm not going to say we didn't believe them, but we had to be convinced after especially the PAC, the Pioneer debacle. We had to be convinced, and it has to be made 100% clear that Pioneer has nothing to do with WBP, and WBP has nothing to do with Pioneer. They're both in Poland. That's it. It's just like how, I don't know, Smith & Wesson has nothing to do with Kel-Tec, even though they're both in the USA. In fact, WBP and Pioneer are even in different cities. But, unfortunately, Pioneer's reputation has done its darndest to taint all Polish guns, but thankfully the WBP guns have held up well in the American market over the years, and that's done a lot to redeem kind of Polish AKs here. Good gun. Not one I'll be selling, especially because it is a pre-production model. And again, it was actually Andrew at Arms of America's idea to send us one to test. He sweet-talked Atlantic into getting us one sent over. And again, really miss Andrew. Andrew, get back to it. You looked out for me. In fact, if you'd been around, an incident that happened this year probably wouldn't have gone down, which I'll explain later on in the video what happened there. Total misunderstanding, but it's kind of one of those things. With that, let's get in to the Brielle. Not just the first Brielle semi-auto to come into the country, but the first semi-auto actually built by FB-Radom, Luxnick, and imported from Radom, Poland. Of course, we had the Archer. The base gun was a good idea. The importer, IO Incorporated, was not. FB has a very good name. IO does not. Nevertheless, IO managed the contract, and these first appeared on the U.S. market in the summer of 2012. And this is my Gen 3, and this is a much better one than the Gen 1s. Mostly they fix things like going to a 3-rivet rear trunnion. They also got the correct profile of the barrel. And these even have the mode selector, even though it's fake, just like the one you saw on the Tanto. But when they first shipped in 2012, they had a fixed buttstock, a generic kind of Galil looking pistol grip, the standard forearm, the wrong muzzle device, no rail with them. They just did not look like a Brielle. Now they could be converted, but parts were expensive, and at the beginning IO wanted $1,500 for these. So between that and the parts, they were less than successful. They would start shipping them with a rail and a collapsing stock eventually, and fixing the muzzle device. But they still suffered from being IO. For example, even up to the end, periodically they would install this muzzle brake upside down. I don't know why. They just did. They also never machined out the bayonet lug here, or the accessory lug here. Why? I don't know. Could have easily done it and had that as a feature. On the other hand, they would happily talk about their tactical sling swivel, which is just a left side bar. The scope rails were nice to have, but they also, for some reason, IO butchered the safety. Here is the original, well, not the original, but here's the correct military one here. Standard just has that, but otherwise standard AK. Here's my old one. I just happened to remember where it was at. IO cut out this notch in the back to act as a bolt hold back, a manual. Not a bad idea in principle, in theory. In fact, Zastava uses it on a number of their guns, but Zastava cuts out a small square. Why is that? Well, when you cut it all the way back like this, it gives the bolt room to travel. When it's locked, it can bounce back, and that builds up inertia, and that can actually push it down and disengage. Therefore, it's exceedingly unreliable and therefore useless. That meant that a lot of us had to either live with an ugly, butchered safety or get another one and pay for it. And then these ergonomic pistol grips started to appear. A lot of these parts were you had to get from Poland back then, 2012. But of course, more recently, Arms of America has brought them in. Another issue, thanks to IO, they came in with a single stack magwell. Some of them were cut out decently. Others were very, very uneven, wavy, rough. And it was hard to get factory mags to fit. Just a very ugly cutout job for the magwell. I'll never forget, I found one of the Archers that came in the store that actually had the leftover metal from the cutout process, just loose, rattling around inside the receiver here. Yeah. So, unfortunately, while it was a quality rifle from Poland, what was done to it here in the USA by IO only degraded it, and people just weren't really interested. The mags were not very easily found back then either. It seemed expensive, plus 223 AKs. It took them time to kind of catch on. So the long story short, even with the Generation 3, IO discovered it didn't want to do it. Instead, it decided to partner with Pioneer and drop FB. The last guns seem to have a 2013 date, but IO was still selling them, at least periodically, on clearance up through 2015. And after that, we didn't really have anything. And the number 700 is often repeated for the Archer. It's a shame. They really were good guns. I even knew at the time any other importer, if they got their hands on these, could have really made a good deal with them. But not IO. Never IO, really. They also managed to mess up the Molot Vepr RPK, complete with bipod and folding stock. That's a story for another day, really. And because these came in via IO, and I'd heard so many mixed things, in 2012, I was not among the first signing up to buy these. I didn't want to buy a $1,500 gun to know that I'd have to put another up to $1,000 in it to make it right. Pick rail, stock, grip, safety, forearm. Yeah, at least $1,000. I wasn't prepared for a $2,500 project in 2012. But after hearing feedback from actual owners and starting to see the parts around and getting a little excited about the parts, I finally bit when the Generation 2 came out. I ordered one from Atlantic. And I liked it and kept that one for a while. We did some videos. When the Gen 3s came out, I was directly distributing these, so I had quite a number of Gen 3s, at least for a brief period of time, and not insignificant fraction of the roughly 150 to 200 Gen 3s probably went through my hands at one point. So I definitely came around to it, and really have enjoyed shooting this one over the years. I sold my Gen 2 when the Gen 3s came around because I liked the selector and the rivets. Why not? And I also got Jay into it. At first, he really wanted a 223 rifle. I finally convinced him to get an Archer, got it to him, and he didn't like it. Well, he didn't like it after going to the range the first time. I wasn't there at the time. It was a local indoor range. He just went after work and ran some rounds through it. And at the time, IO was promising 1 MOA. Most people were being a little more realistic about 1.5. But when Jay tried it back then, he was getting really crap groups, 3, 4 inches. But never fear, turns out it was the ammo. Guess what it was? Yeah, Tula. As soon as we started feeding his and mine decent quality, not even match grade, just, decent stuff, the groups quickly tightened up to 2 inches or less with steel case and, under 1 and 170, 1.75, maybe 1.5 with a good brass case. And I do believe he has managed 1 MOA or very close to it with match grade ammo. This has the 1 in 9 twist, although IO kept insisting it was 1 in 10, again not doing any favors. It has an 18-inch barrel, although IO kept calling it 16, again not doing any favors. It does tend to prefer 55 grain, but it can handle 62 as well. It does pretty well with either one. Reliability-wise, it's equal, just accuracy-wise, it tends to like the slightly lighter. 1 in 9 is a very common twist in Europe. And of course it has the full Brielle mount. But this is all we had for a while. And people weren't terribly interested in them back then. But the usual story. Once they disappeared from the market, prices on Gunbroker went bananas. They went apeshit. Sometimes people just don't want something when they can get it. They have to wait till they cannot. And the IO Archer. By the way, Luxnick is basically Polish for Archer. It's kind of the factory symbol. Some of these had the Polish eagle, some don't. It just depends. But anyway, that was really all we had for a very long time. So here we are, the 3 imports that Arms of America has brought over from Radom, Poland as of spring 2021. The mini Brielle pistol, the Brielle 7.62 carbine, 16-inch barrel, and the Brielle 5.56 rifle, 18-inch barrel. And these all have the name M1, just for Model 1. Interestingly, at least some amongst the import group that got these in, namely Arms of America and Atlantic, were thinking about maybe going for a different name, kind of more of a distinctive name. But it was the folks at FB-Radom that really wanted to stick with a simple Brielle M1 name. So, you know, not to make a fuss over it, that's what they went with. It's just that Atlantic was concerned that maybe people would get confused. And I can understand their point of view. So, why did they succeed where Radom USA failed so hard? Well, for one thing, Arms of America has a good lawyer. And, you know, there are lawyers who specialize in import law. Always helps. For another, they kept it quiet, what they were doing. I can't talk even now too much about it, but I knew these were coming, the pistol, but even the rifles, for some time. And I would get a phone call now and again saying, hey, what do you think about this? Or what about a price point? Or what about a feature? Or what should we maybe order? I'm not saying they always did what I said or went with what, but they listened to me, and they would even call me to solicit this. I guess we'd established a good rapport with the WBP Fox. So, yeah, when it came to the FB stuff, I actually kind of knew this was coming for a while. And the pistol was supposed to be first out last June of 2020. But then COVID hit. Now, the truth is, these were also approved at the same time, or not the same time, but very close to it. But they didn't want to flood the market. They didn't want to do the Radom USA mistake. They didn't want to promise lots of stuff. They just mentioned at SHOT Show 2020 the pistol was coming, and they did so after the ATF had approved it. Same with these. So they knew they had at least a basic line ready to go before even stuff. Yeah, and to be fair, these just dropped. Like, they did announce the pistol, like I said, at SHOT Show, but the carbines, they just went up for sale. There was no pre-order hype. There were no big machine gun shoots. There were no dancing leprechaun advertisings. Just a very simple, straightforward release on Atlantic Firearms and Arms of America's websites. And because of COVID, that kind of made them all clump up together. In fact, they all kind of came in about the same time. The pistol got released first again because nothing had to be done. It could just be sold. The rifles, the carbines, had to have U.S. parts installed. They went with buttstock, pistol grip, trigger group, and muzzle device on the 5.56. And for the 7.62x39, they went with muzzle device, pistol grip, and buttstock, plus a U.S. mag. And of course, as you know, these sold out very quickly, but more are hopefully going to come, you know, law permitting. So yeah, what do I kind of think about these on an individual basis? Beginning with the mini Brielle, I can tell a story now. I kind of got left out of these, and I wasn't sure why at first. Now I know, and it's all Andrew's fault. Last time I spoke with Atlantic to kind of get an update on when these were coming out was, I don't know, October, November, and they were hoping to have them by December in time for Christmas. And I considered calling them around that time, but everyone was so busy. I just figured, well, when they get them in, they'll call me. And I waited and waited. I was out here doing a video in February, and Jay called me, and he said, "Did you know the mini Brielles were there?" And I said, "Nope." And he goes, "Yeah, I didn't think you knew, or you probably would have said something." I say, "No, I had no idea." So we both got on, used our accounts at Atlantic, and ordered them. And I basically talked with Blaine in Atlantic a few days later and said, "I got the gun." It's like, "Hey, I was trying, I was a little hurt, I guess you'd say, because I thought we'd had a good rapport, and again, that they were kind of including me as a very, very junior partner, not partner, but consultant, let's say, yeah, a junior consultant for the last few years." And I thought, well, maybe they found someone better, maybe, you know how it goes. So I was trying not to take it personal. So I just told Brielle, I said, "Hey, just next time, can you, just please include me, if possible." Well, basically, it's Andrew's fault. He said, when Andrew was still running Arms of America, it was usually Andrew who would remind Blaine to call me. And Blaine would call me. So Andrew would put the reminder out, Blaine would call me. Without Andrew there, he had no one to remind him. And so he forgot. He actually did set one aside for me, but forgot to call and tell me or ask about shipping it. And he kind of was like, when he was launching these, he felt like he was forgetting something, but couldn't remember what it was. Yeah, it was me. So it was just an honest mistake. So now we have an understanding that I will call or email him every few weeks when I'm waiting on something. I just didn't want to do it originally because I was afraid I was going to bug him. I know how busy everyone's going to be. It all worked out fine, though. After my gun got caught in a little bit of a snowstorm, and Jay's got caught in a big one in a snowstorm, we both got our guns. We've done a couple of videos already on them. They are great gats. And all is right in the world, frankly. It just kind of shows you how misunderstandings can go, and again, no one's fault. It honestly was kind of funny when it was all said and done. Oh, well, but Andrew needs to get back to it. So, yeah, remind people about stuff like that. As for the gun itself, a lot of people complain about this rear. It doesn't bug me. I'm going to SBR it anyway. I was actually just happy they had the correct rear trunnions for these. So I'm actually waiting to find the right rivets. I mean, I could use any US rivets I found, but I want to actually either get some Polish rivets or at least the right shape. Once I find rivets, then I will pop these and take this off, put a standard rear trunnion on, and probably use the folding stock. I was really happy with how they did the muzzle device, that it is the military one. It does not come with the grenade spring on it, but it does have the slot, so you can just pop one on. It is removable. And to make it legal for importation, these originally come in with a solid pin here. You have to remove the solid pin, then you can unscrew that. So it's a quite ingenious way to comply with the laws, but not really alter the gun, except for one small part. Take standard mags. Comes with one 30 rounder. I can get it out one-handed. Switch it down. So here we have a factory standard mag well cut. And I actually like the rail they went with. I know some people were hoping for more of the traditional sight with the bolted on top rail, but I like this. It's unique and different. It is an option on the FB website for military users. They call it the mil-spec 1913 rail. And it actually sets quite low, not as low as the Gen 3 POPC rail, but I think no higher than the Gen 4 and much lower than the Gen 2. And one thing that's nice about it, you can take your top cover off without unmounting your rail. And it's plenty of long for anything you'd probably want to put on a little pistol. And it has a flip rear sight here, notch or aperture, your choice. Of course, it just comes with the standard hand guards, but there is an effort to import the military ones with the foregrip. And it does have the spring-loaded takedown here, something that the original archers from IO did not have. They had a standard catch, and that's just it. Archers were good guns, but if IO could save a dime, they would tell FB to do it. So there were a few minor shortcuts, like the original ones only having the 2 rivets, things like that. When these were imported by AOA, no shortcuts were taken. They wanted them every bit as military quality as could be allowed under the law. And that does explain the price point of nearly $1,400. But with the way things are going right now, and how few of these came in, and the fact that this is a pure FB pistol, the only one we've had in the country so far, if you like them, I don't think it's a bad bet. By the way, it seems like Poland thought about doing a mini with the 7.62 by 39 chambering, but in the end they just decided it wasn't worth the effort. So as far as I know, all of their mini Brielles have been 5.56 NATO. They have a 9.3 inch barrel, very short handguard and gas system. These are a lot of fun, and they have the usual reliability you would expect from FB. So I'm in no way disappointed. It's as good as I could have really hoped for. Both Jay and I's have been reliable. So yeah, the next step is just SBRing it. And I think a lot of us had kind of thought these might not happen because of Andrew being away from AOA, COVID in 2020. It's just a lot was stacked against him. But in the end, at least one batch pulled through, and a second batch should be coming through any time now. So let's cross our fingers. But it certainly adds to any Polish or Krink type collection. But that was only the beginning. Next, a short time after the Mini, we got our first carbine, the Brielle 7.62 and 7.62 by 39. And this was one I really wasn't considering keeping an example of until I kind of got my hands on it. It's just kind of an interesting and neat gun, and while it's not Polish military, it is Nigerian, and it's really the only true successful export variant in the Brielle family. I think it's kind of interesting how this all abuts itself here with the bipod coupler right up against the block. Then we have the barrel sticking out. Some keep asking why this is done this way. Well, that gives the proper spacing for the bayonet lug. It's not cut out on this one because it's an import, but it gives the right spacing in between here for it to mount on the muzzle brake. And also, if this were a military gun, we give the proper space for putting a rifle grenade on. And it just kind of keeps the regular profile. That's because this is, of course, a 16-inch barrel, not 18. So they had to lose 1 3/4 inch somewhere. They wanted to keep the gas system the same length. So, yeah. Besides, it's primarily meant to be used with an optic, not the iron sights. And it's pretty standard back here. I put my furniture on it, put one of these green mags in it. It just seemed appropriate. I can hit you with the pistol grip there. Like the Gen 3 Archers, it does have the 3 rivet rear trunnion. It also has, well, it had the spring-loaded. I put the manual one in for another video. I'll put the spring-loaded one back in a bit. I just put a manual one in for now. The only thing it doesn't have is the left side selector, or the faux left side selector. Nice even finish, and they did a very good job of cutting out the mag well. I'll show you here real quick. Maybe. Let me sit you down for a second. the sling out of the way. Here's our mag well. Nice even edges. You can tell that they actually did it properly, not just a hack job. Mags go in. Even this foregrip isn't a problem. And they lock in with a nice, satisfying click. Can't say better than that. So while it was one that I wasn't necessarily thinking of keeping, I think I'll just sit on this for a bit. It'll give my fox a nice companion. And at 1500, all things considered, I don't think it's unreasonable for this day and time. But if you disagree, I understand. But it is a battle-tested gun. And as I've addressed on this channel, these are for sure made in Poland by FB-Radom, Luxnick. Yeah. These are not made by WBP. And they are not made in Nigeria. That's for damn sure. Those are just internet rumors that have literally no basis in anything. So, yeah, looking forward to spending some time with this in the near future. And we finally come to the last and most recent one, the 5.56. And if you notice, this one does not have a sling on it, and the Archer does still. And some might realize that means I will be still keeping the Archer. Why is that? Is it a better gun than the current Arms of America import? No, it's not. But I do have a few reasons. Overall, though, I do think that the newer import's better. We don't have a butchered safety. We have a nice even finish. And we have this cut out here, whereas on this it's not. Always nice. Now the muzzles are a little different. This one has the pinned on style of the original. This one's actually threaded. So it is a little different. It's threaded 14x1. This bugs a couple of people. Me, it really doesn't. It's fine. It's close enough. But it does give the gun a lot more marketability in America. If they didn't thread the barrel and this was pinned on, more people would complain for sure. Also the magwell situation. Let's flip this over. This is a much neater, more consistent cutout than on the Archer, especially when my Archer was new. Let me grab a mag and I'll show you. This is a relatively new mag. It's the one that came with the mini Brielle, so it's seen very little use. And you kind of have to seat it. It sits, but it's a little, sometimes with these, they go right in with the way IO machined out the well. Sometimes you had to kind of fidget with them a bit. Of course, I've had this one for years now, so it's become a little easier. But let's show you the mag going in to the new import. Nice click, no side to side play, no front to back, just a nice even lock in, whereas on the Archer give some side to side. Nothing drastic, but it just, they did it sloppy. But it can be fixed. Now, if I was looking at these both new, if I hadn't already spent the time to kind of fix the issues on my Archer, had already fitted it with the buttstock, the pistol grip, the handguard, the POPC rail, if I had to start over with this is a new gun, I would get this. Except for the one thing. The only other thing that the Archer still has going for it that the current does not, and most of you can guess this already, is the left side selector, which does nothing. It is literally cosmetic only. There's absolutely no reason they should have installed it in this one. And to be fair, only the last 150, maybe 200 IO Archers even had it. So at least 500 that came in did not even have it. So if I was looking at one of those Archers versus this, I would definitely get this. Plus these have the 3-rivet rear trunnion. All but the last Archers only had the 2-rivet rear trunnion. The last ones had the 3. So this is a better gun overall. But yeah, this one's my gun. I trust it. I've worked with it. I've customized it. We spent time together. So even though it has a few imperfections, I'll just hang on to this one. I still need to cut out my bayonet lug one day and move this one to someone else who will enjoy it. I've actually had someone contact me who wants it, who I kind of owe her a favor to, so that's kind of what will happen to this. It'll be sent off to fulfill a favor. And it's a very good gun. And really, all you need to do to make it exactly like the Polish military is just accessorize. Put whatever handguard you want. You can go with the traditional pistol grip or the modern. You can go with the folding stock or the collapsing. The collapsing is current. And you can do the rail system. You can do the POP 1 through 4. But I think most people would either go with the Gen 3 or the Gen 4. Change those things, add those things, and you have what the military would have, just in semi-auto. Now, one question people have asked is why these are both marked Arms of America on the side, and back here, Atlantic Firearms. That's done to kind of give validity to the ones that Atlantic converted. That way, if in the future someone's asking if it's a real Atlantic job to convert from Sporter, there's evidence that it is or isn't. If you are looking at one of these guns in the future and someone tells you Atlantic converted it, if it's not marked on the underside Atlantic Firearms, I would be skeptical. I'm not saying they couldn't slip out of Atlantic that they forgot to mark, but as far as I know, they were all supposed to leave Atlantic with their real mark on it to just prove to you it's real McCoy, the real thing. So it's tempting to hang on to the current one. I like the name better. The fit and finish is excellent. Very smooth bolt. It has the spring-loaded latch, which the original one lacked. But, oh well. Oh well. So I've definitely had a history with Polish guns, and they've always had a good reputation. And over the years, that's only grown in my mind as more and more imports finally make it. And it's great that we're getting them because FB-Radom is one of the few AK makers left, even if the version of the AK they make is pretty much the Brielle and its derivatives. It's just nice to see a pretty modern, up-to-date AK coming in as a legitimate semi-auto with no corners cut when it's coming through AOA versus IO in the past. Shame about Radom USA, but that's just kind of how it did. And it's good that a lot of the kits came in back when they could still have barrels, because that's just really been one of the big features. It's just the high quality work that FB has put into their barrels. Again, they got a pretty modern production line about 20 years ago and are using it to make barrels. So they're definitely on par with Arsenal of Bulgaria. So those are my stories and thoughts. But I'd love to hear, and I really would, that's not like one of those bullshit things people say. Tell me about yours. Do you own any interesting kit builds? Do you have a Tantal? If so, is it a Sentry? If so, does it keyhole? It kind of rhymed. Have you seen the original Archer? Have you seen the new Brielle? If so, yeah, do you have an opinion over which you like better? I know the little mini gets some flack, but seems to work well enough for the military. So yeah, let's have a discussion about Polish guns, and heck, we can talk about the older ones if you like, the WZ-44, the Mosin Nagant, or we can talk about their copy of the PPS-43, whatever you like in the comments below. And as always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.